All right, I want to talk to you about the big, beautiful bill, but I want to talk to you instead of all of the politics going around it. I want you to understand what we are facing right now. What we are facing right now is collapse of our economy, collapse. They will say that, what's coming is a collapse that is going to be worse than 2008. I believe, and I could be wrong. Remember, I'm an optimistic catastrophist. I believe that it doesn't have to be this way, but we are looking at losing the dollar, and it's going to happen fast. How do people go bankrupt? Over a long period of time, and then all of a sudden. And the all of a sudden part is coming our way. Now, the majority of Americans feel that the country is headed in the right direction, and I believe it is. But what we're looking at is a really difficult situation. So let me ask you, how did we become the world's leading economy? What did we have that others didn't have? Because it was very easy. And I want you to make a checklist in your own mind. This is what we used to have. We had cheap energy, cheap labor, educated labor. We had small business entrepreneurs. We had individual inventors that were in their garage or their barn. We had ingenuity. We had low regulation, a cohesive society that was built around stable laws and a stable government. That's what it took for us to become the leader of the world. Now, let's go through those and see how many of these we have or are on the road to repairing. Cheap energy. Yes, I think we didn't have that, but yes, we are doing it now. Cheap labor. I don't know how to do that one. Educated labor. Well, as soon as we get rid of all of the DEI crap that's going on, yeah, I think we could maybe re-educate ourselves. Small businesses. No, small businesses are being choked by taxes and regulations. Individual inventors, not really. Everything's being gobbled up by big ed and big government. Ingenuity. Well, ingenuity happens when you don't have DEI, you don't have all of these things, regulations, and when you have tax cuts and people realize I can do this and I can actually make more money and I can get ahead. That's when ingenuity, in America at least, goes on, and I don't think we're there yet. Low regulation. No, the answer to this is not in the big, beautiful bill. The answer to this is in the REINS Act, and you will see by the end of this monologue that is the most important thing we could do. A cohesive society? I don't know. That's our job. Are you feeling like you're making inroads on that one? And stable laws and government. Well, that is the DOJ. That is the FBI. That is restoring trust in our institutions. Are we doing that? Well, I think this is one of the reasons why people think that we are, on the right track because, yeah, we're starting to see it, but we're making some real mistakes there as well. For Father's Day, let your dad know he matters. Get him a gift from American Giant. They make clothing here at home with American cotton, American hands, and American heart. It's quality you can feel. Go to american-giant.com/Glenn and get 20% off your first purchase. That's american-giant.com/Glenn. And that has to happen. That's why Donald Trump, if you look at these, you can understand why Donald Trump has the agenda that he has. He's got to repair these things. Now, the old way of fixing an economy, because you are now in trouble, right? We know that the business in America is not good. The dollar is not good. Our debt is not good, but people don't really understand why it is so bad. Well, let me show you. Remember, I told you at some point, it was right after 2008, I said they're going to start printing money. And they're going to tell you that they're not printing money. They're digitizing money. And everything I said that they would do, and they denied that they would do, they did. And I said that would lead to inflation, which it did. Our government debt would explode, which it did. And our dollar would lose value and eventually lose its place. They would start to downgrade our dollar status, which they are doing now. And then eventually we lose the reserve dollar, the currency for the reserve. And everybody said that would never, ever happen. And now look at where we are. Okay. In the years when I was growing up, how did you fix an economy? Well, the government could step in and they would cut taxes. But when they cut taxes and not cut spending, that increases debt. Then you have the Fed lower the interest rates. That helps people have cheaper money to be able to take loans and start businesses, et cetera, et cetera. But instead, what our people did is they just gave zero interest rates. So all of the big corporations just took on all kinds of debt, but they didn't have to worry about it because they didn't have any interest payments. So they just took on all kinds of debt. That inflated our dollar. By pumping all of that money in, it inflated our dollar. So if you lower the interest rates, you have debt. You have things like QE, quantitative easing, which puts debt on the Fed. And you have inflation, which is our biggest problem. Then the other thing you would do is you would do a stimulus package. Have you noticed that this is the first time in American history, this administration that I know of, that nobody's talking about a big, beautiful stimulus package? Why? Because a big, beautiful stimulus package, that doesn't work anymore because all it's doing is adding money to the debt. And then the last thing you would do if you were a conservative is you would cut regulation. Now, we can't do tax cuts, he's doing, but is he doing the tax cuts in a way that he's just holding the tax cuts, right? We're not getting new tax cuts. Why? Because it will increase the debt. So we're doing the same tax cuts, just making them permanent. So your tax is not going to change. That does not help spur the economy, but it does help stabilize the economy. But he is then take taxes and he is saying, hey, no tax on tips. He's giving tax cuts to the people at the lowest level of the economy. That's not going to spur on the economy. However, because of all the other problems, it's really important because the people at the bottom of the ladder are really struggling and they have to have relief. So a way to do that is give them tax cuts, some sort of tax relief, because you can't do a stimulus package. So let's try this and hope that people spend that money wisely. Okay. The other thing that you do when you have a troubled economy like we have had in the past, and we do now, is you look for a black swan event. You look for a game changer out on the horizon, something that is going to change everything. Sometimes that's war. Sometimes that's an invention. But what will change everything to refigure the economy? Okay, so now let me tell you why the president is doing what he is doing with a big, beautiful bill. Everybody is arguing that we have to cut the deficit. Everybody is saying there's no debt reduction here, and we have to have debt reduction. That is great, and you're right. We absolutely do. I am with you 110%. We cannot continue spending this way. Now, let's look at the other side. Why wouldn't you cut the debt? Well, there's a couple of reasons. You don't think it's a problem. Nobody with a brain doesn't think it's a problem now. And that may explain a lot of what's happening in Washington, because I'm not sure. They may be sharing one or two brains between the whole lot of them in Congress. But you know that this is a problem. Okay. So you don't care that it's a problem. That's another one. You don't care that it's a problem. You just think it will go on forever, and the sun is shining right now, so I'm just gonna keep spending, and I'm just gonna put my head in the sand, and it doesn't matter because the United States is an oppressor anyway, and yada yada. Whatever your reason is, you don't care. You recognize the problem, but you don't care. That's the second reason. There is another reason why not to cut the debt. And it is one that is very hard for Americans to understand. But I take you back, if you're my age, to Ronald Reagan saying, when this debt gets to a point to where we are spending more on interest than we are on our national defense, there will be no good options left. We are here. There are no good options left. The other reason why you don't cut the budget, you look for ways to spur the economy on. You don't cut the budget, at least radically at all, because right now, you ready for this one? It's not going to improve your mood. The U.S. government and the budget, what we spend every year, now accounts for 25% of GDP. So if you want to cut the budget, let's say we just cut it in half, which Coolidge did. That means that we take 12 cents out of every dollar that is being spent and used in America. We take 12 cents out of the economy. Now, we're going to have to do it at some point, but how are you going to do that because that'll hurt the GDP? You will reduce the GDP. Once you reduce the GDP, then you have problems again with the budget, the taxes, and interest rates, okay? So you have to spur the economy on before you start dramatically cutting the budget. Now, if your mood didn't improve when I said your GDP is now 25% of federal spending, let me include the state and local spending. So when you include the tax money that is being spent now, your dollars that are being spent in our economy, and you include the federal government spending, the state spending, and the local spending, the good news is it might be at times as low as 34%, but it's much closer to 45% of our GDP. So almost half of our spending, almost half of our gross domestic product, meaning what we build, what we buy, almost half of it is being spent and purchased by our government. So you cannot cut the budget quickly, dramatically, but you must cut the budget or we collapse. Do you see what Ronald Reagan was saying? We're in a place where there are no good options. If we do not do the things we must do now, and I'm going to give that list to you here. In fact, let me do that now. The number one thing that everybody should be asking for in this big, beautiful bill is not necessarily more cuts. I'd like more cuts. But remember, we have to spur on the economy. How do we do that? We have to stabilize our laws, make sure that we are focusing on education. This is a longer term thing, the education. Stabilizing our laws to make sure they apply to everyone equally. Do the exact opposite of what New York did when they went after Donald Trump's business, even though other businesses do exactly the same thing. You cannot have a growing economy if you don't have stable laws. So you have to strengthen the DOJ and the FBI. President Trump is doing that. You do have to cut, but you have to cut strategically. That's what DOJ was doing. Congress is not doing their part by even passing the minimum of what DOJ did. That's Congress's fault. Then you need the REINS Act, because the biggest thing that will spur on the economy that we can actually do, we can't cut taxes anymore. We can't cut the budget dramatically, which we have to do. So what do? We've already lowered the cost of energy dramatically. We're already getting foreign investment, which will help us reshore for our workers. That's longer term. We have the game changer. It's AI. Here's what we don't have: low regulation. We have to have low regulation. So I want you to call Congress and the Senate and say, put the REINS Act in the big, beautiful bill. Because then you don't have to keep going over and over and again and saying, well, will the Supreme Court allow us to do this? Well, did Congress pass that money, et cetera, et cetera. It puts the power back where it belongs in Congress for all of these regulations. And it defangs this out-of-control, bloated government because it requires that Congress passes all of the regulations. Well, they're not going to pass a lot of them, are they? That's why they got rid of them. This is a Woodrow Wilson progressive tool. Get rid of it, make it an administrative state. The REINS Act is imperative. You want to survive? Pass the REINS Act. It is the only tool that we have that will have positive consequences, and I can't think of any negative consequences because we restore the power the way it is in the Constitution, and we cut all of the insane regulation quickly. which spurs on growth. That's what Donald Trump is trying to do. He's like, we cannot cut our way out of this debt. We have to grow our way out of this debt and then begin to cut. This is why the tariffs, this is his logic on the tariffs. I'm going to get foreigners to pay taxes so we can put that in. I don't believe in that, but he does. That's what he's trying to do. Everything he's trying to do makes sense if you understand the problems that we have. You may not agree with the solutions, but at least somebody is pursuing a solution. You know, there was a great article out today, and we put it in the prep because it is so important. It's from Victor Davis Hanson. And he says, look, historically, if you don't fix this now, historically, he said, from Greece to Rome, through the Middle Ages to the Renaissance, there are only 3 ways of dealing with unsustainable debt, and none of them are good. They're all civilizational killers. Number 1, the Weimar Republic did it in Germany. You pay back what you owe in cheap dollars. You inflate the dollar. And then you bankrupt what really helped cause the depression. You can do that. You can pay back the $37 trillion in inflated dollars. It's just not good. It is the Weimar Republic. Number 2, you can confiscate private wealth. People do that all the time throughout history. This destroys the legitimacy of the government. It makes private investors hide their money. Confiscate the wealth. You're already seeing leftists say that is exactly what we have to do. It never works. Never works. It didn't work in Athens. It didn't work in Rome. It didn't work in Renaissance Italy. It doesn't work. And the last one is the most drastic, and it's a killer too. South America has tried this one, and it's just renounce the debt. Just say, you know what, guys, we're not going to pay you back. All 3 of those are civilization killers. So pay attention to this because your lifestyle is about to change.